Hey friends, another decade is drawing to a close. I thought I would do a top 10 list of best films of the decade, of the 2010s. I actually had to go on Facebook and ask people in 2019 what this decade was called. So I was just informed that it's called the 2010s, and we're going to go through a few things here. I'm going to start with my top 10 list of the 2010s. We'll do some honorable mention films and then some standout actors of the decade. All right, let's get started. Number 10 for best film of the 2010s is Boyhood. Boyhood is a 2014 coming-of-age film. Stars Patricia Arquette. Started production in the year 2001 and didn't wrap until 2013, and you follow the progression of a boy and his mother through different chapters of their life, through different decades and cultural phenomena. And it's one of the most remarkable films I've ever seen in my life. The dedication, the work, and just the artistry behind the film. It did earn Patricia Arquette Best Actress that year. I think she won Golden Globe and Academy Award, and it was very well deserved. Number 9 is 2013's 12 Years a Slave, starring Chiwetel Ejiofor. It was a star vehicle for Lupita Nyong'o. And Sarah Paulson, for me, she's also a standout. Her performance was chilling to me. You know, the coldness with which she played her character. But the film was shot beautifully. In many frames, it looks like a tapestry or an art film, or a painting, I mean to say. And one of the most beautiful films I've ever seen. And I'm very reluctant to watch, you know, slave dramas and things like that. It usually bothers me too much to watch those, but 12 Years a Slave is one of the best films ever made. Number 8, we have 2017's Get Out. It was the directorial debut by Jordan Peele, who's gone on to do Us, which is also a great movie. I'd say it was also a bit of a star vehicle for Daniel Kaluuya. And Allison Williams, who plays his girlfriend, was stunning in the film. I think Get Out was extremely culturally relevant at the time. It caused so much conversation and box office draw. I couldn't bear to leave it off the top 10 list. Also in 2017, staying in 2017, we have Lady Bird, which was Greta Gerwig's directorial debut. Stars Saoirse Ronan and Laurie Metcalf from Roseanne and a few other shows. Lady Bird was poetic. You know, you didn't have to be a white girl and their mom to understand the flow of life. It was just beautifully shot. It's an everyman coming-of-age story that, you know, even me, I was born and raised in Michigan, in Detroit. I related completely, you know. I was totally drawn in. Number 6. We have, and this is an incredibly controversial film, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but we have 2018's Hereditary. It was, I think, written and directed by Ari Aster. Like I started off, it was extremely divisive. People either hated it, thought it, I have a friend that thinks it's extremely pretentious, or you loved it. And I think it was one of the greatest, it's one of two horror entries, one of two real horror entries on our list, but I think it was one of the best horror films of the decade. And one of the best psychological pieces that I can remember. We've got, let's see, I'm a little bit too old to read these notes here. We've got Toni Collette, who gave an Academy Award caliber performance in the film, but who really took me in the film was Ann Dowd, who played the mother's friend that lured them into this witch cult. I think her performance captivated me, to say the least. And I know that word is used a lot, but her performance was stunning to me. Let's move on to a film, a more recent film, and that's 2019's Joker. Todd Phillips directed film. I was reading the trades recently, and I think this week it's slated to cross the $1 billion mark. And so it's going to be one of, if not the most profitable movies by margin of all time. It was budgeted at under $100 million and projected to, go on to gross over $1 billion. And then think about the streaming and ancillary market. Mystery boxes, all kinds of merchandise and this and that and the other. And potential theme park and this and that and the other. So the potential longevity for Joker is, stunning. Joaquin Phoenix's performance is going to be one for the books. I mean, how do you follow up Heath Ledger? You do it the way that Joaquin Phoenix did. It's an unforgettable performance, and it's a film that'll live on outside of the comic book universe. The next one, we're going to jump back to 2013, and it's maybe also a controversial film in terms of a top 10 list, but it's 2013's Under the Skin, starring Scarlett Johansson. It's a genre-bending film, and that's why I've included it on the list. Is it horror? Is it sci-fi? Is it thriller? Is it mystery? It's definitely noir. And also definitely a must-see. Under the Skin follows a lady in a Scottish town. She's driving around in a pickup van, soliciting men off the street. And after each successive man that she lures off the street, and this is Scarlett Johansson, she can have any man that she wants, you get a little bit deeper into what she's doing with these men, where she's taking them. And it becomes a labyrinth of things. I won't give much away, but the premise is incredible. It wasn't executed perfectly, but it still ranks as one of the best films of the 2010s. Okay, and let's talk about number 3 on our list. So we're in the top 3, and that is also 2013's The Wolf of Wall Street. Okay, so The Wolf of Wall Street, we've got Leonardo DiCaprio. Jonah Hill, for me, is the actor that stood out for The Wolf of Wall Street. He put it all on the line for that performance. You could tell physically, emotionally. And it's a brilliant film. It's a Scorsese film. One of the decade, if not one of Scorsese's best. The story is brilliant, funny. Margot Robbie, it's one of her star vehicles. She's gone on to, continue a hot streak in Hollywood. But that was 2013's The Wolf of Wall Street. Number 2 on my list, I have 2014's The Babadook, which is an Australian horror film. It is a primal horror film. There aren't a lot of jump scares. It is a deeply unsettling film on many levels. It follows a disturbed child and his mother dealing with the trauma of having lost a parent. And every level of it, between the acting and the characters and the writing and the thrilling element of the story itself, it took me back to being a child. I remember seeing the poster, and then after I'd seen it, I says, I know that monster from somewhere. It reminds me of something from my childhood, and what it was fear itself. And I've never seen, never experienced a film that brought an emotion to such physical presence for me. The Babadook, if you have not seen it, is a must-see. it's a shame that it didn't get Academy consideration. And on my top 10, my number one for top 10 films of the decade is Interstellar. It was a Chris Nolan directed film, so he's also responsible for The Dark Knight in the previous decade. All-star cast from Matthew McConaughey to Anne Hathaway, Jessica Chastain, Michael Caine, the list goes on and on. Visuals are stunning. The story, the premise is thrilling and also stunning. The execution, I mean, it's a space drama for the ages. I think that will live on to be one of the great films of the decade. This film is a bit getting lengthy, so let's jump on to some honorable mentions. Feel free to comment below and tell me some of your what made your top 10 list for this decade as well. Some honorable mentions, and these are all fun for me, so these are just some fun honorable mentions. We've got Brad Pitt's World War Z, which I thought was a great film. We've got, and I've watched it a couple of times now. The first time I wasn't taken by it. The second time I just loved it. Second mention is Moonlight, which was an incredibly poetic and effective film. I resisted watching it for so long because I thought the story might be too close to my own story and life. It was brilliant film. Black Panther obviously has to be mentioned. It was such a culturally impactful film. We've got Inception, which was an incredible film. You can't do a top films list without talking about the Avengers, Infinity War, and Marvel as a whole. I also want to mention The Witch. The Witch was also an incredible film achievement in my view. I can see that the budget was low, but in terms of acting and using Old English and the themes and being able to make it chilling and effective, I thought The Witch, if you haven't seen that, was an incredible film. Let's also mention Black Swan. I think it's left out of a lot of conversations these days, probably because of the number of years that have gone by. And one of my favorites that is rarely ever talked about is a film called Far From the Madding Crowd. And it's a British Jane Austen type film or story. If you haven't watched it and you can tolerate a period film, and even if you're not into period films, it's such a transcendent and beautiful story and film. I recommend Far From the Madding Crowd. Before we wrap up, I just want to do a quick shout out to some standout actors of the decade. These are by no means necessarily the best actors of the decade, but they had incredible runs this decade. And feel free to drop some of yours as well. I've got Scarlett Johansson as continuing an incredible run and an incredible career as a young actress. She's been a young actress in Hollywood since I was a kid. I'm in my mid-30s. Robert Downey Jr. made a resurgence, in the late 2000s and is continuing the run to this day. It's incredible. Chadwick Boseman, you can't do a list without mentioning Black Panther. And Chadwick Boseman, he'll be mentioned in discussions about this decade for years to come. Mahershala Ali, is one of the standout actors to me in my mind this year, or not this year, this decade. His portrayal in Moonlight, I think, was sensitive and just touching and incredible. Taraji P. Henson has sustained and continued an incredible run this decade. Jennifer Lawrence also, from The Hunger Games and Red Sparrow to all of the different films that she's done. So I'm not going to drag your ear any longer. Leave some of your top 10s. What did I miss? What did I get right on the nose? What were some of your favorites? Please like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification button for more content like this. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.